Welcome back to Baron's New Vegas Melee Guide. Last time we talked knives from the kitchen to the battlefield, and this time we will stay in the home, picking all those things that can be used from inside the home, at least for beginners. And as opposed to those slice and dicers, these weapons just like to bash. They are in the same realm as those knives, being early game weapons. These three are the rolling pin, the tire iron, and the lead pipe, all three of which return from Fallout 3 with about the same relative distribution as before. And although not quite as ancient as the concept of a blade, the rolling pin and lead pipes have origins that go at least as far back as the era of the Romans, and before Jesus at least, with the rolling pin being more ancient than that, although nothing being too different than modern incarnations. With this theme, it's a little less concentrated than that of the knives, but the rolling pin and lead pipe would have been just as familiar to a Roman street fighter as it would be a Viper on the Long 15. As one would imagine, a rolling pin has not changed in its original intended function since it was first made. Originally made of either stone or wood of course being the material used nowadays, it would still be used to smooth and flatten dough for flatbreads before the cultural practice of yeasting dough or when using non-wheat dough. Making sure it was roughly even, it was important with the process of making sure that it cooked correctly and at the same time. Additionally, making flatbreads needed less things compared to leavened bread, only needing a fire or a flat griddle or rock. As for a weapon, a stone pin might do more damage, but it would be more brittle, and the wooden one is barely more than whacking someone with a branch. Now, the lead pipe is a little more well understood as a weapon, given its metal construction, and it is common knowledge that Rome had lead pipes, as did the modern world, until around the 50s, when more intensive lead research was done. Almost exclusively used as a service line, it would be found in every home that didn't hear the news to switch to copper. But what is rarely talked about is why lead was chosen. Lead, unlike stone, is much easier to form into the shape of a pipe, and is flexible enough to be changed on demand if needs be. At least for the Romans, it also had a low working and melting temperature, meaning that it didn't need the same forges as the bronze ones, which admittedly also used lead to lower the temperature of their alloys. In the modern world, it was more flexible than iron or steel pipes, while also being cheaper, having the same lower forging temperature compared to copper or iron. And unlike iron, it had much lower reactivity to water, resulting in longer lasted pieces in cold water pipes. Nowadays, thin copper pipe is used instead, or lined iron carbon steel pipes. But one would not be disappointed by the weight of it in their hands if they pulled out a section up to use as an impromptu weapon, compared to a very bendable section of copper. Although a piece of black iron gas pipe would be the best in terms of durability and damage, just no chance for lead poisoning on the other end. The most modern tool turned weapon is the tire iron, still very much a common sight on the side of the road. The tire iron is a tool that is used to replace the tube inside of a tire, which fell out of use following the invention of the tubeless tires. But the name carried forward to the lug wrench, and some still have the sharpened end to do the task they used to do. The ones that are scattered in the wasteland are just such a tool, having a pointed end, although the Courier does not use it. And although the tire iron's history is just as much of a history of the threaded wheel nut instead of hammered or pinned wheel nuts, it's still a tool. As a forged iron or steel tool, they work as a breaker bar, and as sturdy enough to allow one to retorque a replacement wheel, and without a spare tire, it is only good as an improvised but off-balance weapon, but one with enough weight and angles to make an effective weapon. Gameplay-wise, these one-handed blunt weapons all have a special VATS attack once you reach a melee weapon skill of 50. Called Lights Out, it does 125% of VATS damage, which is doubled already, and the AP cost is increased, but again, if you do not have melee weapon skill 50, you can do the Lights Out special attack by doing a forward power attack. Now starting from the bottom, the rolling pin is the weakest melee weapon in the game. Just like in Fallout 3, it does 3 damage per hit, with only 1.7 swings per second for a DPS of approximately 5.2. It is also unable to crit with a multiplier of ×0, but a listed crit damage of 8. Something that is carried over from Fallout 3 with no changes for 2 other weapons as well. It also costs a heavy 24 AP to use in VATS, and thus has a terrible efficiency of 0.25. Lights Out increases the AP cost by 25% to 30, so the efficiency remains the same at 0.25 for a huge 7.5 damage. In total, it's a wholly disappointing weapon, but what could one expect? The tire iron is just better, being the best for similar requirements as the rolling pin. Every swing does 15 damage with 2.3 swings per second, giving a much more encouraging DPS at 34.6, and it can actually crit at a normal ×1 multiplier with an extra 15 damage. Now this is not doubled during VATS, so keep that in mind. Each swing in VATS costs 27 AP for 30 damage with an efficiency of 1.11. Lights Out brings the damage to 37.5 for 35 AP, so it's an efficiency of 1.07. Not too far off at all, so either one is usable. The Tire Iron is certainly more of a weapon, and the requirements make it a solid contender in the early game and as an impromptu looted backup. But where does that bring us with the Lead Pipe? Now the Lead Pipe is the lower of the mid-game one-handers, stepping away from the Tire Iron that is strictly an early game weapon. It is a step up at 22 points of damage with 2.5 swings per second, and so a DPS of 55.8, moving in a comfortable place against the average armor most things have. Just like the Tire Iron, it has a crit multiplier of ×1 and does an extra 22 damage. Each swing in VATS costs 24 AP, and it certainly performs better than the Rolling Pin. An efficiency of 1.83 is comparable to Lucky or the Mysterious Magnum, and the Lights Out attack is just for more damage per hit if you have more than 90 AP, which is 7 agility. Since it increases damage and AP cost by 25%, so the efficiency remains the same, but the damage is 55 now. The most important thing to consider whenever choosing a melee weapon is the requirements, which increase in the same way with the Rolling Pin and a Tire Iron needing 0 melee weapon skill to use effectively, and the Lead Pipe needing a hefty 50. The strength requirement climbs from 2 to 3 and then finally to 5, which understandably for blunt weapons the strength requirement is on average higher. Weight-wise, the Rolling Pin is at 1, while the other two are at 3, so not too much over the blades, but outside pack rat range. Now all these weapons are common and cheap, with fiends and low-level enemies finding them just as easily as a player can find them in houses or boxes. The Rolling Pin is only 10 caps, the Tire Iron is 40 caps, and the Lead Pipe is 75 for those that want to buy them for whatever reason. The durability is relatively reasonable for what they're made of. The Rolling Pin is weak and can only hit 495 times before it breaks, possibly because you aren't hitting so hard. The Tire Iron, being made out of thick iron or steel, can hit a good 1,495 times before breaking, while the malleable Lead Pipe only gets 245 hits. But the Lead Pipe does have a unique variant, and it is one of the most interesting locations for a unique weapon. The Humble Cudgel is found in an unmarked location, the Sealed Sewers. You first have to get to the Central Sewers, which is through the sewer gate in front of the Camp McCarran, and then find Luke or Jill to get the key to unseal this feral ghoul-filled section. On a dead prospector, you find this Humble Cudgel, which he customized with a T-section of pipe for more damage and durability. Given that you can encounter a feral ghoul weaver, or a glowing one here, the reward for such a task is not quite worth it. Like the dinner bell or Chance's knife, there's a lot of danger involved for a weapon that might not be useful when you get to it. But if you do, it is a good boost with 4 more damage at 26, and swings at 2.8 swings per second. Crit performance is the same with damage moving to match the normal swing. It has a higher DPS at approximately 72 and only costs 21 AP in VAT. It is a big jump at 2.48 damage per AP, but it uses the same cost as the standard Lights Out. So for 30 AP you get 65 damage and a lower efficiency of 2.17. Their durability is only 370 strikes from fully repaired, which is a 50% increase but isn't very good. And at a value of 350, it is cheap to fix at a vendor if you need to. In conclusion, there are other weapons the Courier might find as trash, like these weapons. Things that are so common that you might even forget it is a weapon, but between the Tire Iron and Lead Pipe, you will find a starter weapon that is worthy of your attention for a while. As a one-handed weapon, it might take up more of your vision compared to the two-handed versions, but it swings faster and can help you get in a strike all that sooner to knock the gun from your enemy's hands. But that also means the reach is a little more intimate than those two-handed weapons. And with the Tire Iron, it is a weapon that if you pick up one of them in good repair, it'll probably last you until the next level up, or until you find something better.